Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show that helps you successfully navigate to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio are two financial advisors from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We have a very important show for you today. We are going to be detailing some of the most common mistakes that folks make when it comes to their retirement savings, and specifically how they are withdrawing money from those accounts. There's a lot of research that shows that these mistakes are common. We're going to share that information with you because we want to help you avoid making those exact same mistakes. So Tim, Jeremy, great to be here with both of you. How are you guys this week?
I'm good, but I'll get over it.
I hope not, right? And Jeremy, how are you?
Doing very good, thank you.
Good, good. Well, you guys are keeping me on my toes today. I know that we haven't had as much time to prep this particular show as we've prepped some of our others, but this is an important conversation for folks to have, and this is where you really shine and specialize in, because understanding it's not just about saving enough for retirement, it's even more crucial to understand how to withdraw money, how to pull and generate income for yourself out of this money that you've worked so hard for. And there's lots of rules of thumb out there. We're going to talk about some of those today, why they may not work in today's economic environment. And there's several common mistakes that you guys say are hiding in plain sight. And you see these in your offices when folks come to meet with you. So let's talk about the withdrawal rate mistake, which really cuts in both directions, if you will, because some retirees are taking out too much. Some aren't taking out enough. I think of Goldilocks, right? We don't want to take out too much. We don't want to take out too little. We want to get the right amount. So talk about these two extremes.
I mean, both can cause real damage. I see both. I would actually say, and Jeremy, hop in if you disagree, but I tend to see people underspending, taking a too low of withdrawal rate more than I do taking out too much.
Usually.
Usually, not that I don't see it, but obviously, there's a clear problem with taking out too much.
Sure, everyone understands that. Yep.
You run out of money. And like, what are people's big three when they come in? When can I retire, Tim? Is my money gonna last as long as I need it to?
Yep.
Bingo. And then will my family be okay if something happens to me? And that, again, all these are interconnected. It depends on when I draw Social Security, how much I have in savings, what's the tax consequences of those? Are my beneficiary documents up to date? Do I have an effective will in place? That's why we have the Retirement Compass to help guide us down this path. But on the other hand, underspending is actually, in some ways, equally damaging, because what it means is saying no to vacations, missing time with grandkids, not getting to experience the trips and the things. And if you think about it this way, a Venn diagram, and you've got two circles, right? And on one hand, you have experiences. On the other side, you've got the people you love and care about, okay? Where should you be spending your money and making sure that you're hitting a proper withdrawal rate? Not, again, the Goldilocks, right?
Right.
Just right at the intersection, which is where you spend your money with the people you love and care about, doing the things you've always dreamed of. But when you underspend, you end up where you get to the end of your days and you've got this big bucket of money, a gob of money that, somebody's gonna get, but they're not gonna appreciate the same way because they didn't work for it, right? You did. And so you wanna be intentional with how you spend your money on purpose, so later on there's not a day you look back and say, man, I wish I would have done that differently.
Exactly. I can share real quick from my own family. So one set of grandparents didn't have a written financial plan. They weren't sure, and they kept saying, well, someday we'll travel, but we need to wait till this, that, and the other, or we're not sure if we have enough when they had the good health. Well, then unfortunately, grandfather started failing health. My grandmother took care of him, which she was happy to do. He passes away, but by that point, she was too old to then go do these things. They had all these dreams and plans and never got to live them out, and that's equally as tragic.
We see it all the time, unfortunately.
Yep. Right, no, for sure. So I mentioned rules of thumb. We got to talk about the 4% rule. So Jeremy, I would love for you to define that first in case folks aren't as familiar with it, where it came from, sum it up, and then we're going to get into why it doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, so we talk about the 4% rule a lot. Most people come into the office and they'll say, I heard somebody say, I should be able to pull out 5%, I should be able to pull out 7%, or I should be able to pull out 4%. But 4% is the one that I probably hear about the most in the office. And actually where that came from, it was in 1994, actually the year I graduated, when the Huskers were actually good, 94, 95. You remember that? The good old days?
Yeah. Hey, our baseball team's pretty good.
Tim?
Yeah,
I was 8. I remember
messing
those
with
things
you.
very well.
I'm just messing with you.
Thank the Lord that I remember that, because if you're under 30,
It's been a
this
rough-
is foreign to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was actually a financial planner that came up with this number. And what they were trying to do is they were testing to see, his name was William Bingen, and he was in Texas, and he was trying to help determine for his clients what is an appropriate withdrawal rate. And so he was doing some math, and he went back to 1926 and came forward. At what rate could somebody withdraw money for a total of 25 years where they would not end up running out of money, right? So that was the analysis he was doing. And he assumed a 50-50 stock bond portfolio. And what he was accounting for is he was just saying, okay, it was actually 4.15% is what he came up with, but I think it got rounded down when he published this. But the most critical understanding about the 4% rule is that's the starting point. That's the first year that you're taking withdrawals from. And so the challenge with that I talk to a lot of people about is, if we're taking 4% out of our accounts every year, how do we keep up with inflation? Well, if you actually read the study, it actually talks about that. That's where it was starting at 4%. And then you add inflation to that every year going forward. Now, the question that I always ask is, who's calculating the inflation? Because, if our government's telling us inflation's 3%, but you go to the grocery store and you buy eggs that are double the price, I don't know if it's really 3% or not.
Are you saying your healthcare premiums haven't dropped by 20% over the last 4 years?
Yeah,
Because that's what the government tells us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's part of it, and that's so the 4% rule. And again, we talk a lot about rules of thumb, but we don't really like to use them because I can't apply that same number to every client that I have.
Correct.
Right? So that's why we have to do this planning. The second misunderstanding is that was the worst case floor. So one of the things that we always talk about, and when our planning software allows us to put in what we call guardrails. So we can say, okay, if you were to withdraw $40,000 this year out of $1 million, that'd be 4%, right? And next year we're going to withdraw more. That you're going to be fine. You're not going to run out of money. But let's figure out, how much could you spend right now, and how much would you be able to withdraw? At what point would we start to be concerned that you're going to run out of money? And so that's the lower guardrail at 4. The upper guardrail, I don't know what that number could be. But again, the idea is, how do we figure that out? How do we calculate that? And there's been a lot of other people that have done these types of studies. In fact, Bingen himself, he actually increased that to 5.25% later on, doing some additional research. So again, it just comes down to which makes the most sense for a specific client.
Right.
That's the number that applies to them, not these rules of thumb, if you want to think of it that way.
No, for sure. Well, I know we're going to get into more of the specifics regarding this and the mistakes, but if somebody's watching right now and they want to be able to take advantage of these resources that you're talking about, these software, these systems, these guardrails, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I would just encourage them to not fall victim to the someday tendency that most people fall into. I need to get to that someday. The reality is, you're watching this program right now. I hope you pay attention. I hope it's a good use of your time. But by the time that this afternoon or tomorrow morning rolls around, depending on when you're seeing it, you'll have forgotten the majority of what we were talking about in the discussion here. So the time to take action is now. Don't fall victim to the Parkinson's effect, where you decide that you're going to allow the amount of time to get this done, this change, this activity that you know has been, for some reason, you're watching this program, whether you know it or not, something's going on that you don't feel you're getting the right amount of advice, proper guidance, a high level enough of understanding of what's going on with your finances. Let today be the day that you call that number, get a hold of one of our experienced advisors, and we can walk you through, again, no cost, no obligation. The most you have to lose is maybe 15 to 20 minutes of your time on this discussion, where we'll find out where you're at and your preparedness for retirement.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. That number to call to schedule your complimentary written financial review is 866-256-7778. Or if you'd rather connect online, simply grab your smartphone. You can scan that QR code there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We're going to continue this important conversation on understanding the hidden mistakes that can lie within your withdrawal strategy for retirement right after this.
If you think about the average American consumer, we don't talk about financial topics very often. And so we spend a lot of time at Stonebridge doing educational seminars and different things that are free of charge. If you're not educated in a topic, how do you make educated decisions? When you're working with a client, you're sitting down with them, they're a little stressed out, but after you go through the process and you really take time to educate them on not only what we're doing for them, but why we're doing it, that really gives them peace of mind, and you can see the weight just kind of drops. And when they leave, I hear all the time,
I really should have done this years ago. But sometimes there's a fear that somebody might try to sell us something. If the things that I can provide, if you don't want, don't need, or can't use those, I've got some good news for you. We're not going to sell them to you. We are fulfilling our fiduciary duty of putting their interests ahead of our own.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristen Oakley, here with both Tim and Jeremy from Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and we are so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, Tim and Jeremy are doing a great job of highlighting some of the most common and yet dangerous hidden mistakes that folks make when it comes to withdrawing income from their retirement accounts, and we don't want you to fall prey to these same mistakes. So the next one on our list is a big one, and it's perhaps one of the most technically dangerous mistakes that I find, and I know you guys do as well, that a lot of folks have never heard of, don't understand. So we want to take our time really on today's show and explain this well, because this one can cause permanent damage. So walk us through what we call the sequence of returns risk and what it can actually cost somebody.
Sure. So before I get into that and show our fancy chart that we've got ready for our audience today, let me just give like the basic Cliff's Notes
definition.
version.
Yep.
So it's based on the premise that losses hurt more than gains help. And so let's say I have $1 million in my 401k right now, right? Mm-hmm. And go back to the last major market meltdown. It was really, really bad, would have been 2008. I mean, COVID, technically in 2020, we had a 35% drop. But a lot of people lost about half their money at some point during 2008. That was a scary time. Thankfully, for the last, 17 years, our economy's spent a total of 3 or 4 months in a recession, so it's been pretty smooth sailing. That can be dangerous as well, because sometimes that makes us, that recency bias, we forget about what can really happen, what the true price or cost of admission is for being an investor. So let's take that $1 million and the market drops and it loses 50%. Mm-hmm. How much money do I have? It's pretty simple, right? Like a half, mm-hmm. 500,000.
Yep.
The next year, the market is up 50%. So before we do the math, if I lose 50% one year and I make 50% the next year, what's my arithmetic average, my straight, simple average?
0.
It's 0.
Right.
So intuitively speaking, what do most people, when I give them that example, that calculation, and I say, okay, well, how much money do you have at the end of the second year? What does almost everybody tell me?
They assume that they have the exact same amount that they started with.
Yeah. They got their $1 million back, right?
Right.
Let's walk through it. I had $1 million. I lost half of it. I have $500,000. I make 50% of 500,000. Kristen, how much do I have left?
750,000.
See, she can do the math. She's good because she's done this before. She understands what's called a geometric average, which is the fact that a given loss requires a much larger return. A 50% loss requires a 100% return to break even. Now let's put that into more realistic terms, because, oh, Tim, 50% losses, those don't come along very often. You're right. But we're going to pull up a chart here to show what real returns have looked like in the market that all of these you folks out there, that all of those 401ks are invested in. So this is just the S&P 500 from 2000 through 2023. Now, we've had a nice little run here, and so we'll update our chart for next time. But what you can see is if you're not taking money out of your account, the sequence of the returns, in other words, in what order the returns happen, they don't matter. The average is the same. If you go from 2000 through 2023 or 2023 through 2000 in the reverse, your average return is the same, and the $1 million that you had to start with that I just gave it as an example, it grows to the exact same amount. Okay, wonderful. So Tim, what in the world are you and Jeremy trying to tell us about? Well, we don't try to be all things to all people. At Stonebridge, we are retirement focused, right? We're retirement income specialists. Just like a lot of people out there, they're thinking, oh, Tim, I'm watching your show here, but I've got a financial advisor. Yeah, I bet you have a doctor too. But if you were having heart problems, are you going to go to a cardiologist? Or are you going to go in and sit on the butcher paper at your GP's office and say, hey, can you get me in for a stent? No, you're going to go someplace that specializes in this specific area. We specialize in the distribution phase. Let's pull up the slide that shows you what happens when you start taking money out and the sequence of returns starts to really cause problems. So on the left-hand side, you have those same returns from 2000 through 2023, and you have all that damage. The beginning of the time period, it's the tech bubble, it's 9/11. You have a 3-year bear market. And by the time you get to like 5 years into your retirement, you really have, it's true, you have half the money left because of what you experienced. Now, why is it so problematic? Because you're also taking what was 5%. Jeremy said that this gentleman that created the 4% rule, he adjusted it to 5 1/4 or whatever. Well, the problem is, if you aren't prepared for retirement, if you don't have a proper balance between safety, income, and growth in your portfolio, and you're relying on the whims of Wall Street, you're free climbing in Wall Street, so to speak, for the success or failure of your retirement plan, that red shaded area, that's what could happen. And I don't just say this hypothetically or theoretically, this is the real returns of the S&P 500. And by the time we got to 2018, you would have been out of money. When you flip it on the right-hand side, I mean, if we added 24 and 25, which were both great years, you'd have over $2 million left. Sequence of returns is real and it matters. And when you get into retirement, you need to shift your focus from another paycheck showing up 2 weeks from now, so I don't have to worry about what's happening in the market, to I need to adjust my strategy, model, and ensure that when those storms come, because again, Jeremy said this on the last show, like the market we have a bear market about every 3 years.
Right.
That I'm prepared, because it's not if, it's when.
Yes. I love the example that you shared, because I always talk about it when I'm presenting this to live audiences, of the difference between Wall Street math and how math actually works. Because Wall Street's not lying to us when they take the average, let's say the long-term historical rate for the S&P 500, right? Average 10% per year,
Yes.
going all the way back to 1926. So you have that, and they're not lying, but what's important is your yield, how much money is left, right? That's the issue.
Yeah, it's actual versus average.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where that 50% math kicks in.
Yeah.
I sometimes like to use like up 60, down 40. A lot of people are like, oh, I made 60, I lost 40, then I'm up 20, so I have $1.2 million. But that's not the way it works.
Right.
If I make 60, I'm at 1.6 million. If I lose 40, I'm down to like 960 or something like that, or 964, whatever the money is,
Right.
math is. So I have less than what I started with. It's
Yep.
not a one-to-one symmetrical type
Yep.
of return average.
Well, real quick, Jeremy, before we wrap this segment, there's a tax dimension to this as well. And there's a window of time, if folks don't get in front of it, it becomes too late to fix it. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about sequence of returns, and we're talking about sequence of withdrawals today, right? So the idea behind the sequence of withdrawals is typically most people will take money from their taxable accounts, then their tax deferred accounts, and then they leave their money for their Roths later, right? And that does kind of make sense. Or sometimes you have people saying, in fact, I had some people come into the office the other day and they said, actually, I want to take money from my Roth first because I don't want to pay the tax on it. So I just want to let my tax deferred money keep growing, and eventually my kids are going to get it. I'm probably never going to use it. Well, that is the exact wrong thing to do. And so we walked through, what does that look like? Why would you not want to do that? And it's the RMDs, because when you turn 73 or 75, depending on what age or what year you were born, you're going to end up paying, you're going to have to take money out of your 401k account, or if hopefully you've rolled that over to an IRA, so you're going to take it out of your IRAs.
Those required minimum distributions.
The required
yep.
minimum distributions, and then you end up paying tax at that time. What we see for a lot of these people that are doing this planning, or they're not doing the planning, when we start to show them how much their RMDs are actually going to be, it's significant. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases when they're in their 80s. Because what happens is the RMD, the first year you take it, is around 4%, and then it keeps increasing every year.
Right.
So the government knows what they're doing. They want you to defer that money as long as possible to, so basically you're paying tax on the harvest rather than the seed that you started with. So that's what we see a lot. And when you retire, if I retire at, let's say, 65, I've got about 8 years, because let's say I was going to have to start taking my RMD at 73. I've got about 8 years where I can do some tax planning. And if it's done right, I could reduce that liability with those RMDs when I'm in my 80s. So I'm just taking money out to pay taxes.
Right, yeah. Clearly so much goes into this. This is why you offer the complimentary written financial review. What would you say to someone whose head might be spinning after our recent conversation about sequence of returns risk in particular?
You don't have to be an expert in this. We can be your guides, right? Your pilot and co-pilot. Just imagine, if you've traveled recently and you're heading down the jet bridge and it comes to a fork, right? And to the left, you look and you can see into the cockpit, and there's two, let's just say, veteran-looking pilots. They got some gray in the hair and a bushy mustache, and you're thinking, all right, that guy, was that the guy from that landed the plane on the Potomac, that Sully fella? I feel pretty good about that one. And then you look to the right, and there's nobody in the cockpit. There isn't a pilot, but there's an elaborate computer system. You can even talk to it, and it'll teach you how to fly the plane. Which one are you going to trust to get your family to your destination safely? Look, Jeremy and I, we've flown the plane. We can land the plane. We've done it tons of times. We're in the cockpit. We're inviting you to come on board, sit back, relax, enjoy the flight, and we'll get you home to and from your destination safely. Give us a call today.
Great analogy. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. That number to call is 866-256-7778. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code, and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
Imagine not having to face your retirement journey with the same old corporate solutions as everyone else. In these economic times, you deserve a fresh perspective that includes a personalized income plan and a tax map from an independent fiduciary advisor whose focus is on you. Call the number you see here to schedule your complimentary review.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristen Oakley here with Tim and Jeremy from Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and today we are discussing several of the hidden mistakes that are often in plain sight that a lot of folks are making and not aware of, and that's why we want to expose those mistakes and help you avoid making them, specifically when it comes time for you withdrawing income from your accounts. Inflation is a big one that people overlook, so let's get into that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, let's think back to the show The Price is Right, right?
Oh, I love that show.
Well, how about The Price Was Wrong? How much do you think a loaf of bread would have cost back in like 1974? I don't know, a few cents. How much is it today? You think about like, they came back with the Ford Bronco, right? 30 years ago, you could get one for $10,000 maybe. I have a client that they bought like the real fancy one. I mean, it was probably a $70,000 vehicle.
Easily.
What I like to do at workshops is I say, okay, raise your hand if you bought your first home for less than $50,000. A few hands go up. Okay, keep it up if it was less than 40, 30, 20. That's about where, like, I've seen 20 to 15,000 for their first home. Okay, now raise your hand if you've spent more than that on a vehicle. Almost every hand goes up.
Yeah.
Inflation cannot be overlooked. We make sure that we're using accurate numbers, though. We don't just use a general, like, oh, it's 2.5% or 3%. Again, those are the government's numbers.
Right.
We're going to look at healthcare and say, you know what, that's probably double the actual posted rate of inflation. So maybe that's going up at 5 or 6%, because that's going to be one of the largest expenses that you, and if you're married, your spouse will have to navigate at some point during your retirement years.
For sure. And then our longevity is the big risk. It's like the risk multiplier, right?
Yes.
Because the longer we live, that's a blessing in a lot of ways, but the longer we live, that compounds everything from inflation, cost of living, healthcare costs, medical care costs. So what else do you want to speak to on that longevity piece that folks are often missing?
Well, so, I mean, we're living longer than we were, right? Back in the, well, look at Social Security just as an example. Social Security was started. What was the life expectancy when Social Security was actually started?
Was it
Like
62, 63?
60.
Right? It was like in the early
60.
60s.
And you had to be 65 to get it.
Yeah, you had to be 65 to collect it. And so it was set up to be one of those, oh shoot, you survived longer
You
than
lived too
everybody
long.
else.
Yep. Yeah.
So here's a safety net, right? So longevity can have a significant impact on a lot of different things. But when you look at what you would actually spend in retirement, initially, the first probably 10 to 15 years of your retirement, you're going to spend more because you're doing what? You're traveling.
Exactly.
You're doing a lot of different
things that you've been
right?
waiting to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're going to spend more, and then that's going to start to taper off as you get older, because maybe traveling doesn't seem as fun anymore. Getting patted down by the TSA is not as fun anymore, so I don't want to travel. So I'm going to slow that down. And so you're probably not very active for a few years, but then all of a sudden you start spending more. And what are you spending more on at that point?
Healthcare, long-term
right?
care, yep.
So healthcare, long-term care, and that's just the natural progression of typical spending. So the longer that we live, the more money that we're going to need. But that doesn't mean that living longer is bad. My grandma is 95. Yeah. She'll turn 96 in June, and so she's still living at home. She's still sharp as a tack. She's still telling me stories of people that came over from Germany and other places, actually to fight in the Civil War.
Wow.
I have relatives that came over to fight in the Civil War from Germany. So the point is that doesn't mean, just because you lived a long time doesn't mean the quality of life is bad.
Right.
But we need to have a plan in place to walk you through that. And, we talk a lot about this is an example that I use a lot in like workshops or other events. I talk about what do people do when they retire? Like, let's say I want to retire and I'm going to travel somewhere. What do they typically do? They usually charter a bus, right? They say, okay, I want to take this bus because they're going to Branson or they're going to Mackinac Island or whatever it is. They're scheduling that with a tour guide, right? Why do they do that? Why do you schedule that?
Because you don't want to have to be responsible for trying to figure out what there is to see, where to go, when to be there, where to eat, in the very limited amount of time that you'll have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it comes to retirement planning, you're not an expert in this. If you are just retiring, this is your first time retiring, I think you should call Stonebridge and give us a chance to prove all the times that we have retired through all of our clients. It's one of those things that it's kind of a no-brainer. I would rather go with someone that's done this many, many times rather than trying to figure it out, especially if I'm going somewhere where I've never been before, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, clearly so much goes into this. Again, the fact that we don't have pensions and guaranteed income, or some folks do, but not as much anymore, really complicates this equation. So what would you say to someone who's watching who has those same concerns we started off today's show with of when can I retire? Do I have enough? Am I going to be okay? And what happens if something happens to me?
Earlier I said that there's two types of people in this world, right? Those that hear this type of information and think, that's interesting, and then they go about their way. And then there's those that change their circumstances, they take action to change their circumstances to better serve their purposes and navigating themselves closer and closer to the retirement of their dreams. We can be the guy that Jeremy just talked about. We encourage you to give a call to the number at the bottom of your screen now.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. 866-256-7778 is that number to call. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on the Retirement Compass.